and today I'm gonna be discussing my executive function profile. So let's start. The objectives for today are to review executive function and its relation to self-regulation, and analyze head, toes, knees, shoulder tasks as a measure for executive function in young children. So let's review what we learned about executive function. Executive function is a set of mental skills that include cognitive flexibility, being able to change perspective spatially, working memory, holding information in mind and mentally working with it, and inhibitory control, being able to control one's attention, behavior, thoughts, and or emotions. Research says that behavioral self-regulation robustly contributes to achievement after controlling for initial achievement levels and other sociodemographic variables such as child IQ, age, ethnicity, and parent educational level. I'm gonna be using throughout this presentation the following definition of behavioral self-regulation. Behavioral self-regulation can be said that is deliberately applying multiple component processes of attentional or cognitive flexibility, working memory, and inhibitory control to over socially contextualized behaviors. Because it allows children to shift focus and ignore environmental distraction, helping them to remember, working memory, to follow directions, like raising their hands, and as a consequence, responds in favor of adaptive behaviors. As you can see, behavioral self-regulation is very well connected with executive function skills. So the task or measurement that I use for my profile is the head, toes, knees, shoulders. I used this test because it was being very well validated. The range of ages that it's been tested is 4 to 8 years old. It tells the participants to act in a natural response. It's easy to follow and administer. It's very short, only 7 minutes to administer, and it's very easy and simple to score. It goes from its scale to 0 to 2, and it has a total of 60 points. And very important to me, it comes in different languages such as English, Spanish, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Portuguese, French, Arabic, and others. A few of the skills that it can be seen in HTKS, it's paying attention to the instructions. So participants have to pay close attention when the administrator tells them what to do. It works with working memory since the participant had to remember and execute new rules while they process the command. It also shows inhibitory control through inhibiting their natural response to the test command while initiating the correct and unnatural response. And it shows cognitive flexibility and working memory when rules are accumulated and then changed in the second and third sections of the test. So how does it work? It has 4 pair of behavioral rules. Touch your head, touch your toes, touch your shoulders, touch your knees. Rules are switched by responding in the opposite way. So if the administrator say touch knees when told to touch shoulders when told to touch knees. In other words, the participant will have to touch their knees when the administrator told them to touch shoulders, and they will have to touch their shoulders when the administrator told them to touch their knees, doing the opposite. It also, at the last section, all of these pairs are switched and it gets a little bit more complicated. So here's an overview of how the instructions are done in the test. The administrator will have to read them out loud so the child can react to them. Very simple to follow. So how did I administer the HDASK test? I have 3 participants, 2 girls and 1 boy. I administered the test 3 different times. We practiced together 1 time, and then we did 3 individual times. And I used 3 different languages, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So I'm gonna go over my participants. My first participant, I call it participant 1 or Miss O. She's a 7-year girl. She's 7 years and she's a girl, sorry. She was born in Puerto Rico, but she moved to the United States at 6 months. Her home language is Spanish. Her school language is English. She reads in English, she writes in Spanish, she speaks in English, but she also speaks in Spanish often, and she listens to Spanish and English, and she has no music background. My second participant is a boy, he's 7 years old. He was born in the United States. His home language is Spanish and Portuguese. His school language is English. He listens very often to English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Spanish from mom, Portuguese from dad. He speaks mostly in English, but he does speak some Portuguese often, as well as Spanish. He reads in English, writes in English, and has no music background. My third participant is I. She's a girl, a little bit older than my other two participants. I chose an older participant, even though the test is for 4 to 8 years old. But I wanted to corroborate the ages and see how will be if there will be any differences between ages. So it was just for personal reasons. I know I cannot have conclusions about this participant, but I just wanted to try it. She was born in the United States. Like the participant number two, her home language is Spanish and Portuguese. School language is English. She does listen to English, Spanish, and Portuguese often. She speaks mostly English, but she does speak some Spanish and Portuguese. She writes in English, reads in English, and has no music background. So the data that I collect from 3 participants when doing the HTKS test, for participant number one, her English score was 50 out of 60 for an 83%, and her Spanish was 48 out of 60 for an 80%. I did not administer the Portuguese test in these participants since she has no Portuguese background. For participant number two, his English score was 38 out of 60, 63%. His Spanish was 35 out of 60, 58%, and his Portuguese was 46 out of 60, 77%. Participant number three, her English was 59 out of 60, 98%, 42 out of 60, 70%, and 36 out of 60, 60%. I'm gonna go some general observations in regards of the test. Children did better individually. I did test and try to do them as a group in order to clarify the instructions, but when they were together, they have many distractions and they compared themselves when doing the test. They did better in English with the exception of the boy, and they had to repeat, or I had to repeat section 3 several times to clarify for instructions. So in regards of, I want to take a look at my participants individually. I want to see how the LSBQ relates to ATSK. So for participant number one, Miss O, she speaks English, even though she speaks Spanish as well, her LSBQ shows in 70% of English speaking, so she speaks more English than Spanish. So her score was a little bit higher in English, but out of the 3 participants, she's the one who speaks the most Spanish. So she gets an 80% in Spanish. That, to me, it shows like a good balance between both of languages. She's a girl, so maybe this will impact on her score difference from the boy. And she's 7 years old, that it also, she's in the higher spectrum of the range for this test, so maybe that has to do with it. But I think her scores are quite interesting. They're not very high, but we see that maybe this participant has some good executive function. When it comes to the participants, this participant, she was this participant with the highest scores in Spanish, and her home language is mostly Spanish, so they speak only Spanish at her house. So I'm pretty sure that's why between the 3 of the participants, she has the highest score. The boy, he reads mostly in English. He also listens to English, Spanish, and Portuguese, but he speaks, from the 3 participants, he's the one who speaks the least Spanish. He does speak more Portuguese than Spanish, and this is why probably his Portuguese test was higher. He's a boy, so I don't know if that impacts his scores in Spanish and English be lower. I do also think that this participant in particular, when he did the Portuguese exam, was his last test from the from all the other tests. So maybe he already knew a little bit of what was coming with the test, but also throughout all of his tests, section 3, surprisingly, in Portuguese, that it was the most difficult section of all of the tests, was his highest score. So maybe he has to do more cognitive process. He will have to inhibit more the English when it came to Portuguese. But I did see more executive function in the section 3 of the Portuguese test than in the other tests. In the English test, his scores in the first two sections were higher than his last section, and in Spanish as well. So I'm pretty sure that by the end he already knew what to do, but he also, when he has to do it in another language, he has more inhibitory control. Participant number 3, even though she was older, we can see that in English she has a high score. So of course this test is not for a participant in this age, so we can corroborate that because of her score. She does her highest score it's in English. Very interesting because, of course, she speaks very well English. She writes in English. She reads in English. Even though she had some Spanish influence, her score was not as high. Surprisingly enough, her score in Portuguese is lower than the participant that is 7 years old, the boy. But maybe he had more interaction in Portuguese with her than her. Sorry. So what I will do next, what do I think about this test and how can I do a better or administer better this test next time?
Então vai. Toca a cabeça. Toca o dedo do pé. Toca as rodilhas. O joelho. Toca o dedo do pé. Toca o ombro. Toca a cabeça.
As you can see, there's a good example on how this participant reacts to the test. This was done in Portuguese, and even though the person who administered the test got a bit confused between rodilla, knee, joelho, Portuguese, and Spanish, right? Even the participant itself knew what he was talking about, so I found it very interesting. Also, the participant, he did correct himself a few times, so I think by this time he already knew better what to do, and you can see him thinking better about what he was supposed to do. What I would do different, I will bring another person to administer the test. I think that it was very important for a very good fluent person to administer the test. That's why I use a native speaker for Portuguese. I will use a different time of the day and without practice. I think by the end, they did a lot of practice, so I think practicing one will give me better data. And maybe doing during the morning, I think, was the best time of the day to complete the test. And use higher productive language skills participants. My participants were very passive when it came to Spanish, Portuguese. So I would like to see data or use the test and administer to participants who can speak more productively the language. So as you know, my name is Carla Zayas. I hope you enjoy my presentation. If you have any questions, you can email me or you can comment below and give me your feedback. It's always a pleasure to see you. Hope to see you soon next time. Take care.